Sneak, casting Streaming Light Magic Duels, and this time we're hitting back the talent of the Telepath deck and a few changes on the card list. So I removed some of the cards that were not seeing play, and I added a single brain in a jar that I hope that the scrying might at some point be of relevance, and also it could let us play a spell for free by storing mana on it in the form of counters each turn. Also, I've added Nissa Bastwoodseer that is going to speed up the drawing and getting cards, because the difficult part on the deck to work as intended is to get to the talent of Telepath. So in this version I'm going to try to scry my way to the talent of the Telepath, but I'm thinking that if that proves to be not good enough, another option is to try to use the Temillo's journal that lets you, by sacrificing 3 clues, searching for a specific card from the library. So this could be an alternative to get to our desired card, but maybe a little slow, but might be required to this deck working properly. So let's jump right straight into some match and see how good does this new version of the deck. That's of course quite fun, but the deck has some backup plans that let you win without requiring the talent of the Telepath. So you can win without talent. That's kind of important to have in mind. But the amusing part of the deck is trying to cast multiple times that card. So here we are starting with 2 lands, but a little bit of interesting spells on hand, Disperse and Jace. And I think that if we get to activate Jace at least one and put the Geist Blast in our graveyard, it's going to be good for us. And apparently the milling here is not going to be quite easy, because our opponent is running a monstrosity of a 100 card deck, and I imagine that he's going to be playing around the Iridium mechanic, or maybe ramping to some huge ring monsters. But it is quite odd to see the white in such a deck, so not quite sure what's going on. So I'm going to try to see if our Jace survives for at least one turn, and this is going to let us take a peek on the opponent's card. Apparently white and green creatures with renown. That appears to be the case, and also an enchantment to lock down our permanent. So the opponent is Barra de Cereal is trying to choose the best card, so he left the irregulars and the top of free blade in the graveyard. So he took, I don't recall what he took, I should have been paying more attention. And now he is going to play this Citadel Castellan. That was the other one that I wanted, I didn't solve. And now possibly our best choice is to maybe drop the Primal Druid, that way she can block this Citadel Castellan and pass the turn. So for the time being we are not going to be taking damage unless our opponent has some trample spells that is possible to apply to the Castellan, and that way she gets renowned, but we can disperse if that girl grows too large and seeing this kind of spells is good for our milling intentions, but at the same time the opponent gets lots of lands in play. Hopefully he drains his hand very soon, and now we have access to cast the Case Plus for 2 damage to kill something, but actually at this point I think that it will be better for us to try to find a forest first. The Case Plus is not going to kill D2-3, so here we have a fourth plant for us to use later on. So finding double blue means that we can keep the countermand if we want, and Lamox Kramer still has no exiled targets to feed him, but also there's nothing in the graveyard that we want to use. Another card that fills the cemetery, and I guess that the opponent is going to pick up Nissa, and he gets to pick 2, no, not yet, because Spell Mastery is not enabled, and so he did. Nissa is out, and she's going to transform this time, and let's see what happens now. Apparently nothing, and we are going to just leave up our countermand. Probably I'm going to hit Nissa's with Case Blast. Probably I think we can. What happens if I pass the turn? I think this must be done just now, because on the other hand, letting the opponent have Nissa and drawing lots of cards can be good for us, but we want the cards to be in the graveyard and not in the opponent's hand. Now the opponent has an enchantment that is going to help him draw, and we have our 5th land, and we can wait. And I think it's time for us to start drawing something with Jace, but let's wait until the end of our opponent's turn. Here comes a beautiful Chaos Revenge that we are not going to be able to stop just yet, so here I'm going to block with the Primal Druid, so we fetch a land for us. Second card in the graveyard. Let's bring up a swamp that we are missing from our colors. Evolving Wilds, okay. Now what? So this is going to be complicated. We can use this, but this has haste. So I think that we can Evolving Wilds. Our Nissa is going to flip, and we get to search. Okay, first let's remove one of the lands from the library before activating Nissa, and I'm going to drop another island just in case, because we have many of blue spells, and I'm going to try to get something useful out of Nissa, and it was a land. Well, could be worse, and now I think that we possibly can block with Jace and get him to transform before dying. We need to have 4 cards in the graveyard. We cannot target Gaia's Revenge with most of our spells here. So let's see what happens now. So as expected, the opponent is just attacking our Planeswalker, and I'm going to block Gaia's Revenge. I'm going to pause the timer and cast Disperse on his Castellan. Yes, because that way we don't take damage and the Castellan doesn't get renowned. And also I'm going to draw a card and discard, and I think that Evolving Wilds can be safely be put in the graveyard. And Celestial Flare, I think it didn't work the way I wanted to, so I think I should have waited for something to be resolved here, and this is kind of bad. Now the opponent dropped the Reclamation Sage, just as it is. So let's see now what can we do here. I think that the best choice for us is to try to use Crash of Tentacles to bring all this back to our opponent's hand and countermand the Gaia's Revenge. But first, let's take a look at what is in the top of our library and another land. Well, at least we now can afford to play the Crash of Tentacles, and let's go ahead with that, and we have enough mana to play the countermand later. So that's it. Everything has returned to the owner's hand thanks to this one card, and now we pass the turn, and we have. Oh, I think that we cannot counter the Gaias. Let's try. Okay. Well, it says it can be countered, and effectively it couldn't, but we got to mill something. We get hit for 8, but apparently the game lets you target the spell. I think that that's something that we have to take into account now. But now I think that I'm going to use the Green Warden as a defensive measure against this one, but we have seen a Celestial Flare from our opponent, so according to the amount of lands that there are currently in our side, we are recovering the countermand, and we are going to cancel this reprisal here, so we can block the Gaia's Revenge, but it's quite likely that our opponent has another one, or maybe Celestial Flare. Elemental Bond, and still enough mana to cast the Celestial Flare. So if the Green Guardian of Moresa dies, we can choose to bring back one of our cards to our hand. But we want to do it just now. I think that we do not. Yes, I think having Jace is worth. . So let's start by playing Nisa first. We are bringing out another forest that maybe we should haven't done that, but it doesn't matter. Now we have the Planeswalker here with us, and let's start by revealing another card from the library, and finally Talent of Telepath has shown up. And what to do now? I think I'm going to start casting this right away and finish, but oh no, there was the choice to duplicate using the Gaze Blast, but now I missed the chance. Well, that was a pity, but we are close to having half of our opponent's library down, and I think that here our opponent is going to try to finish our Nisas. So apparently, okay, this is strange. I'm going to let the block happen. So let's see, Reclamation Sage, and we would like to have something that we can play, but it was Hissing Quagmire, so I'm going to draw and discard, so Jace becomes Planeswalker, and alright, we can safely discard this one, or not, maybe we just discard the Evolving Wilds. So I guess we are going to spend one of the talents of the Telepath in the graveyard so we can cast this, and we are exiling two of our key cards and we are not going to be able to use them again, but let's hope to hit something useful on the opponent's deck that is going to help us here. So we are going to activate also the Case Blast, but Browser, come on, timer stop. Why? So here, come on, I want to cast this, right? Okay, finally it worked. So we are going to mill the opponent for 14 cards doing this, but got two cards exiled, and now what is this? Exile target creature, but we return it to graveyard. Wild size lets us draw, and I think that Nissa's pilgrimage may be fine here. Let's give this one +2/+2, and that way we get to draw. We got a forest, and second talent of the Telepath. At least we get to gain some life out of it. So we're back at 16 this time, and we cannot yet play anything this time, but this one is going to be able to kill Chaos Revenge next turn if we are alive. But here our opponent is flashing a creature, so this is going to be hitting us quite hard, but let's hope the opponent is worried about his chase, but that appears not to be the case. We're going to be left at 1 unless the opponent is running some pump up spell. So we drop down to 1, and this is a dire situation So what to do now? I think that it is about time that we search for the octopus. Here, crash of tentacles. What is our opponent trying to do at this point? We don't know. So here comes the crash of tentacles. We are going to pay the search cost. So that's it. What is our opponent doing? Good question. And surely missed. For some reason, the opponent is giving +1/+1 to target creature until the end of turn. So we recover the Jace, that is fine, and we cannot activate the Hissing Quagmire, that is problematic, and we are at merely 1 point of life, so I think that we need to have as many blockers as possible because our opponent is about to flash something. Here I guess Nissa is fine to have on board now. So we can deal with this one using Murderous Compulsion, but here comes the Gaia Revenge once again. So this turn we are forced to log, and we could choose to make that. I'm kind of scared that our opponent has some pump up spell at Outweight. For 2 mana we are pretty safe. So here we got rid finally from Gaia's Revenge, but here comes Retaliation in the form of the Sunblade Elf. We are getting Nissa, but I think she's not going to be able to transform. I'm not running any more forests. Okay, yes, is there something for you to find? So no is the answer. And here we're going to Murderous Compulsion here, this guy, and Possessed Scab. I think that we should recover the Countermand. Countermand might be fine. I think let's go with the Countermand this time. So we are past the middle of the library of our opponent and already have milled quite a bunch of cards. Look at this guy here. So quite of powerful cards, but too big of a deck to be helpful. So for some reason the timer is not letting me counter the way I want, but I don't mind. And here we're going to block with Nissa, because if we lose this guy it gets exiled from, and we might get Nissa back using some fetch. So here I think that the Sluggish Throne and Villamot's Reclaimer, and let's assume that our opponent has yet another Gaia's Revenge. I think that is quite possible that we are going to see another one. So let's skip the attack and be kind of worried about that. So here's one. So I'm quite convinced that our opponent has another Gaia's Revenge in store for us, or maybe something even better. Oh no, that is kind of what we do not want to see. So to deal with this flyer we should have something that we can use to discard on demand, and that way we can Murderous Compulsion. So here I'm going to activate the Quagmire. Let's finish this one off, and so here, and prevent damage over here. Alright, so we survived. Of course, let's draw, and we discard the Mortal's Compulsion. Alright, Lamox Reclaimer, not quite yet available to be used, so here I think that's what to do. So, could return Jace from graveyard, get to recover 2 creatures from. Right, let's get the Solution, and I think that's it, because we had exiled our answers against a flyer, and now we cannot stop this one from finishing us. If we could give Jace haste, it would be different, but that's not an option now. So we have been defeated, and probably because I failed to activate on time the Gaze Blast in one of the earlier turns, but I think that it was a nice game, a very aggressive deck, but playing with many cards. So if our opponent wouldn't have been running such a huge deck, we could have, of course, have gotten to the middle point. But also by losing Jace, that was a mistake, because we lost Jace by casting a spell in response to him activating his ability. That was another huge mistake that I should have done. And now let's focus on the current game. So here, these lands are not what we need, and we are lacking blue. We could get the blue with Evolving Wilds, but it's kind of not what we want. So Brain in the Jar on the opening hand, on the second mulligan. That is going to be good. But apparently we are facing a very aggressive start from the opponent, so given that, I think that we need to have this online for turn 2 and use Murderous Compulsion before Brain in the Jar. So we are risking taking more damage here and not activating this with Madness, but I think that our opponent might be trying to attach some auras into this one, and we want to have access to finish it with Murderous Compulsion, but since our opponent didn't use his 2 mana, I'm going to assume that we can use Evolving Wilds this turn, risking taking more damage now. So we missed playing Brain in a Jar, but I think that we are luring our opponent into playing something bigger that we are more willing to kill using these 2. So Consul's Lieutenant is a nice target for Murderous Compulsion. So let's see how the opponent. So the big question now is going to be what happens now, and this is kind of excellent draw, because by doing this I'm going to use Nisa to fetch a forest, and Nisa is going to trade with the 2-1. I think that our opponent is not expecting that to happen. That is going to work in our favor, and then using Macabre Bolts we can return Nisa to our hand and use Murderous Compulsion against this. So I think this is in our best, but we are facing this card. Okay, the creatures get larger and indestructible, so our Nisa dies, but take doesn't take this guy with her. But other than that, we made our opponent spend this card. So now we can cast this for 2. So Nisa returns to our hand, and we have to discard, and we choose Murderous Compulsion. Let's use the Madness and get rid of Consul's Lieutenant. So we have dropped in our life total, and we have nothing on play, but we have much more cards than our opponent, and Nisa is near his way to transformation. Also, Sting in the Eyes can stop this expedition boy. So far, just white from the opponent's side, and here, let's see. So I think that Thing in the Eyes plus Savage Thorn is the right way to play. If we had the mana, of course. So that's not happening. So alright. Let's start activating the brain in the jar. So this can be used to cast our Murderous Compulsion. Also, this is a sorcery, we can cast that for free if we had this with 2 counters. That's not going to happen this turn. So always watching. We're going to activate this one. This enchantment is giving the creatures +1/+1 and vigilance, so that makes them safe from our compulsion. So that is going to complicate the stuff that we want to do. So and our opponent is very quite likely to be carrying a reprisal if we flip the Thing in the Eyes. So let's go for a forest here and drop the Evolving Wilds. We are short on blue, so here we go. Iceland it is, and these cards having vigilance is going to complicate our game. So I think our best bet is to disperse, but we have to pay 1. We do not have enough mana to do all that we need to do on the following turn, so it's going to be quite painful for us to deal with this. So we are going to activate this one, and what Yes, we want to activate this burst over this one. We minimize the damage, and also if these creatures attack, they are going to turn sideways, and they are under the reach of Murderous Compulsion, and this flyer is the main target for using this. So, fair enough. We are down to 6 points of life, and I am missing the Duels of Mirasa that will be helping us quite a lot now. So here, let's see. Case Blast is good, but we do not carry red yet, so let's start by, first of all, since we are not attacking, let's play a land to flip Nissa into Planeswalker mode. Let's see what we find. And it was another land that we can use to get to the red that we like to see, and Murderous Compulsion against the Bygone Bishop right away. We have to get rid of him. This Long Road Home is going to exile this, and it reappears with a counter at the end of the opponent's turn, so this is looking dire. We are going to play the Bantine here, and let us scry. I think that we should scry for 1. Okay. And this we don't need, and we drop the Salvage Throne, and let's see, maybe the opponent chooses to pay attention to Nissa instead of our life total, but I think that the opponent might be running more pump up spells, and we are finished. And also he can make this one unblockable, so we are pretty much dead thanks to the Rogue's Passage. That is a nice addition to a deck that runs Always Watching. So we didn't get to play the talent of the Telepath. So, alright, we got defeated because our plays were slower than the opponent's very aggressive deck, and our cards are very slow, but even worse than that is that we are not hitting the talent of the Telepath on time. So let's see if we can do better this time. It will be quite interesting to be facing a Delirium deck, because the Delirium deck wants to have many cards in the cemetery. Also a zombie deck is going to be trying to do the same. So let's see if we get the luck on our side this time. There are many options available for us to run here that would help discarding the opponent's library, but I think I am way too focused on using the talent of Telepath and recasting this spell many times. That is what I want to do. That is the key concept of the deck. Let's see if we get to make multiple casts of that. So now again we are on a creatureless hand, and we could get to enough blue later on to play counter spells, but doesn't seem too likely. Here I like playing Labyrinth Falls. That is going to let us play the Salvage Throne very early and start exiling some cards, and even play Brain in the Jar if we do not get lands to Benthic Infiltrator. So far so good. Let's go ahead with Savage Strong and Evolving Wilds too. Let's go Wild, let's go Evolving. So what would we like to have? Here we have red and blue, and I think that we are lacking a little bit of black, but I think the present matter. We want to have double blue just to make sure that at some point we can use countermand. Of course, Brain in a jar can bypass the colors that we need. So this card is quite interesting. Here, Hangwire Militia Captain is going to pose a problem, but let's just wait to see if the opponent chooses to attack with it or not. So since I think that the opponent is willing to attack with this, should I use Brain in a jar and take 2 damage, or play Benthic Infiltrator and save life points and wait a little bit more to use this card? So this might be the breaking point of the game, because this is more inclined towards getting to cast this for free, and this is more about exiling cards sooner. This is going to be able to attack unblocked. But we might need to left this on defense mode. So we swing if our opponent is not playing something else. So he used a Vicon Bishop. So I'm expecting to see Tireless Tracker very soon here. So let's begin with a Benthic Infiltrator attack. And brains in a jar. Let's use the brain. So a clue generator pump up spell. Now, do I want to block with Salvage Strong if the opponent attacks with both? I think that having the Tireless Tracker out there is going to be quite a pain, so it's very likely that we have to use Disperse on it. And I think that we have to prevent losing life. We are going to be given the choice to draw and discard something, and I think that is not bad to do so. And let's ditch the Crypt Digger, because eventually we can bring it back with Macabre Walls. And here the opponent is going to have double triggers from the bottom wilds. So here we are going to put a charge counter here. Yes. So this one is going to enter tapped. That's bad for us. So we cannot activate the Lumbering Falls. We cannot use the countermand yet. I think I'm going to hold the Benthic Infiltrator on defense and just pass the turn. I like to use Catalog later on, but that will spend all the mana that we require for Brain in a jar, and hopefully the opponent is going to crack these two right now, so we can bounce the Tireless Tracker back to hand. And Tamillo's journalist appeared that Tamillo Field Searcher. If the opponent wants to draw, let me eat, but now he's not going to use these clues to enhance the tireless tracker. So, but now I think that I'm going to block here. We are taking 4 damage, but I'm going to catalog right away. Let's hope to hit something juicy. So here I think that having Geist Blast is in the graveyard is good. Now what? Let's kill this one for sure. And leave this on defense. Skip the attack. And continue. We have what? We have the Gravedigger and the Salvatron on the graveyard. We can return them using Macabre Ghost. But I think that we are going to have to disperse this 3-2. So let's block here this 2-2 and let's hope the opponent uses the clues right away. So he didn't. He drew 2 cards. And what now? So this is getting closer and closer. So this poses a problem because now double tireless tracker is going to be very problematic. We should start hitting damages as soon as we can. We want to Macabre Walls. Probably we do. Let's activate this. So we return these two to our hand. And we have to discard and what? Let's discard the Primal Druid or the Salvatron. Salvatron it is. Now think in the eyes, quite good here. This is good. So let's think. So I think we need to hit this Mio before she reaches enough loyalty to activate his other abilities. So he can untap, tap these two. So can he kill us? Probably. Our opponent cracking the clues. Now he taps and possibly is going to swing with all of them together. 6 lands, more clues appear. What is our opponent thinking? If he attacks with all of them, we can block one, we can save the thing in the eyes if we want to. A good point of protecting the thing in the eyes is that if we get to flip this one, we get rid of all the creatures. But here came Angelic Purge, that is very nice because the opponent sacrifices a clue, and he removes the brain in a jar. That is sad, but I prefer that instead of the thing in the eyes, but maybe opponent is running more of this. So no, apparently there was no activation from Tamillos. That is strange. So we got hit for quite a bunch here. Another creature appears, and now I'm going to get rid of one of the tireless trackers, and let's hope that we can flip this thing in the eyes before we die. So the creatures, what happened here, I'm not sure. So we can block two things. With this we could block three things, but our opponent is running plenty of removal. But we are not yet dead, but we could have one life point and little hope to defend, and also Temillo can tap our defenders, so maybe our opponent is not seeing that, because I guess he could have killed us earlier. So more landfall triggers happen, so let's just see what our opponent is up to. So he has more than enough to finish us off. And we the sad count of just 3 lands, I mean 4 lands, that is quite limiting. And okay, he plus at Mio. I think the opponent just wants to see what happens. But we can sacrifice the permanent grid, and that is quite good for us. We can prevent all damage here so far. Let's get another island and cross our fingers. So if we could cast 3 more spells, we would be good, but Vivian Strike is just one of them. So not much to do here. We could Gravedigger for this drone. We would have 4 blockers, but still the opponent is waiting to activate Trillios. So let's just do that and proceed to find another match. and that's it. So, well, as a goodbye gift, I'm going to hit the Miju, so she cannot use her ultimate, but we are going to be dead on retaliation. So let's let's try to find I think the game number 4 here, to see if we somehow pull out the combo of talent of Telepath. Alright, of course, I think that if we get to there, it's going to be because of sheer luck. Let's see. So we have an earlier brain in the jar and lots of lands, and also Green Garden of Murasa. And I think that because of the brain in the jar, we are good. So we are going to start with Building Wilds to get the mountain, just in case. Now we can follow up with Ireland and Brain in a jar. So Stop Treasure Mage is a bad sign, because this is going to be a deck with very aggressive spells and prowess creatures with also fly, and we are not going to be able to stop them quite yet. So I think that we already can see ourselves losing very quickly here, but okay, let's not leave the game until we can see what's going to happen. Choosing Thief. So far no prowess activation, and alright, the opponent hitting us for 1 another time. Next turn the opponent gets to draw with Chisean Thief. If we do not stop her, so we got another land. Very problematic draw, but okay, let's go ahead with Misa and let's try to stop the Chisean Thief from doing damage, but it's quite not likely. The opponent probably carries something to get rid of Misa right away, and Sphinx tutelage might help us actually, because we have Green Garden of Murasa. Funny enough, so if we can get to the talent of Telepath, that is going to be of great help to us. So let's hope the Sphinx places the talent in our graveyard, and later on we are going to be happy. So now look at this hand. We have been drawing all the lands that we do not want to have. So we have 6 lands in hand. Alright, that is too many. So let's go just... No, we are not going to do this during our main phase, because maybe we scare the opponent with a counter spell of the sorts. So we get milled, and what did our next 2 draws would have been lands. It is quite funny, but let's see who shuffled this deck. Who is shuffling this one? We have to find a new job for this guy. So now let's go place a counter on the brain in the jar, and we have Jace in the graveyard, and the first talent of Telepath appears. So double blue, we should be playing Darnet Catacomb, and let's cross our fingers to hit something useful from our opponent here, but most likely it's going to be drawing spells. So Exquisite Firecraft and Fire Impulse. I'm going to use this on the Interesting Thief and pass the turn. And if we survive, we could use Spring Warden of Mirasa to return the talent of Telepath to our hand, and it's very likely that we are going to find the Spell Mastery enabled next time. But we are getting lots of damage, and I think our opponent might be holding a counter spell now because he did not play anything. But we haven't seen counter spells on the other side, so here let's go with a swamp and primal druid. Or Green Guardian of Mirasa. So I think that we have to play around a counterspell that is quite likely to happen. And cannot activate the Quagmire quite yet. So we see we're losing some interesting cards, but lots of currents brings this back to our hand. Now the opponent is attacking for more power, and we're going to activate this. Our opponent still has lands enough to use a counter spell, and another land. This is kind of annoying. So let's go again with the Primal Druid, but this time if our opponent can use the Storm Chaser Mage, it's going to be quite bad. So I think that we are about to die unless we use the Green Guardian of Mirasa right now. But it's 50-50 because if this gets countered, we lose anyway. So no, and we got the talent of Telepath. And before our opponent draws into more cards, I'm going to cast it with the brain. So we talent of Telepath, and we target the opponent, and let's hope that we can remove the creatures. So Fiery Impulse, and this pairs to where we do not have the Spell Mastery oddly enough, or maybe the brain in the jar doesn't look into the Spell Mastery. Fiery Impulse retaliates. So the big question for us is, do we want to return Talent of Telepath to our hand using the exiling of Warden? I think that we do, because we cannot rely on getting something else. Now the Prowess saved the Storm Chaser Mage, but also prevented some damage. So, but this one is scary now. So our hope could be to Crash of Tentacles somehow. So 6, we could We could combo something here, but it's going to be too slow. So let's hardcast this one and try to destroy something. Fall of the Titans, not good enough. Search, this lets us draw, and this one, okay, confirm. So disperse. We are going to disperse the tutelage and grip of the royal, the gene. And alright, what to do now? I'm between saving mana for hissing Quagmire or using Macabre Balls. I think that just in case I have to get rid of the Jory and Rune Driver, and nothing in the graveyard is going to save us, although we could bring back Chase, but we die. So let's see if our opponent has something else to kill us. So now we activate the Quagmire and let's hope the opponent is not able to kill this. Rip off the royal and we are gone. So quite interesting, aggressive milling deck, and we want to see how much the library managed to remove. So the thing to consider is that so far exiling the Green Guardian of Mirasa is not actually so helpful. So let's go ahead a final time, final try. This is the final countdown, and I think that we have learned something. So the power of Green Guardian of Mirasa here is to be that we are able to bring him back from graveyard and use that to play the talent of Telepath multiple times. And a bit disappointed with the brain in the jar because it ignores the spell mastery, so we have to watch out for that. So here we have the possibility of turn 2 Think in the End followed by turn 3 Benthic Infiltrator, and that is quite a good starting point. Also Lemot Reclaimer, letting us fetching some spell. So our opponent has a little bit more of 60 cards. Here, one on the board. Now he fetched a land. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 67 cards in total. So I'm going to play the swamp. Red is not going to be needed soon enough. But we can enjoy the untapped hand here. So far black and green, and we drew into the talent of Telepath and have Element's Reclaimer with us, and that is just lovely. So Benthic Infiltrator it is, and maybe our opponent helps our milling by discarding cards, because this could point towards Delirium deck, but since the opponent had no early plays, quite maybe it is about sacrificing creatures. When the opponent sacrifices something, he gets to reveal cards until he hits a land. Also, these two cards are beautiful here, so let's start. by doing Benthic Infiltrator here. Very nasty creature, this one. Is quite annoying. And we... wow, we exiled the Planeswalker, that is Jackpot, Numbering Falls, and Savage Throne. So since this one enters battlefield tapped, we cannot cast the talent of the Telepath right away. So let's see, if we hit on something from talent of Telepath, I'm going to assume it's going to be Sacrifice card. Here appears a Elf deck, maybe this is about Elf and having Elf tokens to sacrifice with the Evolutionary Leap. But this is going to give us some time here, because in the Elf deck it's not going to be carrying many powerful creatures until we are more advanced in the game. So, and also flipping Thing in the Ice is going to be very powerful. Let's start by using talent of Telepath, and maybe we get to hit on something that we like. So Fog and Primal Bellow, nothing that matters, but we are going to cast this anyways, because the Thing in the Ice is going to lose one of its counters here. And let's drop the Mortuary Mire without value, but this allows us to next turn use Possessed Scab. Or Ulamax Reclaimer. Ulamax Reclaimer is best since we can defend against the elves. So our opponent all tapped. Now, do we want to block with Savage Throne? Maybe we do. We are not forced to draw and discard, so I'm not going to do just now. Or maybe... so, no, we are far from the spell mastery, so no point yet into... also, what? Well, that changes our plans. So here comes the Ulamax Reclaimer. We have to send one of the exiled creatures into the opponent's graveyard, and now the Infiltrator is going to hit the opponent. The damage doesn't matter because when the opponent hits us with Dwayne, he's going to be gaining life. See, so he has one elf in the graveyard that can be used to pump up the Vine Breeder. This is very scary if the opponent has enough mana to afford the activation. Could trigger attack swing with everyone and sacrifice something with the Evolutionary Leap. Means our opponent is short on lands. He found the number 5. So if he has there's an elf that deals damage equal to the number of elves in play, that is the most worrisome elf for us, so we should try to flip this one as soon as possible. So we have seen the opponent running Primal Bellow, so kind of risky to block with Thing in the Eyes. So let's just block this one, and if the opponent likes to use his mana to pump this up, I'm fine with that. Wild size on this, just making this safe but not trampling over. So now I'm going to use Talent of Telepath, and if we hit on some spell, this is going to be flipped, and that will really help the cause. Otherwise, we cannot afford to attack because we are going to need Broker Rip Soul. But I think that by the time the Rip Soul results, the creatures are already dead on the hand of the opponent. There we go. All back to the opponent's hand, and we can freely attack because, lucky for us, there are no elf with haste, and our opponent is far from Gaia's Revenge. So, Shaman of the Back, this is nice to have to see this one in the graveyard, but there are more copies available. Visions of Brutality, problematic maybe, but now we can use Green Warden of Mirasa to return Possessed Scav, to return Talent of Telepath, or directly Green Warden of Mirasa on Talent of Telepath, but also Yulamox Reclaimer. But here I think that our opponent has to be very careful on what he's going to do, because there's a 7/8 Awoken Auror on the battlefield that he has to worry about. No Rip Souls that he has can deal with this large creature. So we are near half the opponent's library, but he started with a deck with more than 60 cards. Bone Splinters could kill the Awoken Horror. Sorry for my pronunciation, guys. I think that is horrible or horrible. And something weird going on. Maybe the opponent has left, maybe the connection was lost, or maybe he did not realize what happened with this. Okay. So the timer is up, and the opponent gets to attack with no creatures, and end of turn he has to discard, and slowly we see the timer crawling near the end. So if our opponent disconnected and has been replaced by AI, I guess this is not going to do nothing. If our opponent is sitting there just looking at the screen, this is going to discard cards at random. There we go. So finding a land helps quite a bit. And what could possibly do our opponent against our 7/8? Let's just attack with this and find out if our opponent has something. He does not. So let's go ahead with another Egomox Reclaimer. So we recover the talent of Telepath yet again. That will be the cast number 3 in this match, and let's place the Nisas on the graveyard, because if the opponent happens to run Green Guardian of Mirasa, I don't want him to recover the Bone Splinters. So another slow timer is going on. Maybe it's the second time that the timer runs faster than the first one. Have you played Hearthstone? If there's a connection problem in Hearthstone, there's a rope that symbolizes the timer, and the second time that a connection problem arises, the rope runs much faster. So here the opponent, I'm assuming that he's going to block with either this, and no, he did not. He could use the evolutionary leap to get rid of this. So, but let's go ahead with talent of Telepath. Yeah. Fog, wild size, give granting trample to one of our creatures. That is, guess which one is it going to be. We get to draw 2 and a tapped land. Not perfectly helpful, but still we are going to play it. And let's swing with 9 points of damage and 10 health, and just leave these 2. In case the opponent survives this attack, we want to have enough blockers, especially against the Vine Breeder here, that can be very powerful. So our opponent held back the Vine Breeder here. So we are seeing damage and quite a bunch tramples over. Our opponent is at 3. So I think that he has to kill us on next turn, because Lumbering Falls can deal with this. So let's just cast the Pilgrimage just to filter our library. Not that we actually need more lands at this point, especially green. So, but actually with 6 we can play the Green Guardian of Mirasa, and well, the opponent left. So we are not actually out of danger here, but he has his Dwynend and finally started using the evolutionary leap for something useful, but at the same time the library is thinning out. So here let's see, we could attack with the Primal Druid. That will be quite funny. So 6, but the land is going to enter battlefield tapped, so no point into doing that quite yet. So let's just start clearing, because we do not want this to be filled with elves. So there we go, one less elf to worry about. And guess which one of these cards are we going to fetch? Yes, it was this one. How did you know? So we use the ability and just drop the Permanent Druid. It is possible that our opponent runs Languish, but that is not going to stop the Awoken Horror. Awaken. A second Dwynend. quite nice. But we are getting really close to finish the milling. Maybe we draw into our second talent of the Telepath that is somewhere beneath these 40 cards here. It was an island, and let's just place it on board and go ahead with talent of Telepath. And let's look at this. Rip Soul and Bone Splinters. We can only cast one of these, and I think it's going to be Bone Splinters because I want to get rid of the Primal Druid, because in the process we get to find another land that is going to be an island. Alright, so we can easily finish the opponent here, but we are so close to our goal here that I do not want to. So let's just hit with the Green Warden of Mirasa, and the opponent has to block. Pentic Infiltrator. So we have another thing in the ice that we could find. Come on, 12 cards. This is just a couple of talents away from doing what we want to do. Come on. So mind you that the opponent has possibly more Bone Splinters, and there it was. Effectively there was a Gaia's Revenge in the deck. What else is in there? And the Fog, second evolutionary leap. This is the computer doing stupid things here. So Alton Colossus, Fogs, Planeswalkers, enchantments, Crypt Digger, excellent. So we retrieve the Possessed Scav, we fish, we catch one, and the Possessed Scav is going to recover talent of Telepath. So still we do not have spell mastery, funny enough, and here let's go with this, just in case. One extra exile, so we mill the opponent and he gets to 11 thanks to the Ventic Infiltrator, and then when he draws, so if he activates, it activates the Evolutionary Leap, there is going to be less cards in the deck, even still. So Gaia's Revenge here, so but should the Gaia's Revenge attack or stand on defense? So Adverse Compulsion. So this is a nice removal, but it's quite difficult to use against vigilant creatures and things that has a variant of hexproof. It's not so good as I expected it to be. So Fog, we cannot target Geyser range with Bone Splinters, so no point. Okay, well, Fog before combat. No, let's just finish. And we are almost there. We're going to hit once more with the Ventic Infiltrator. And we send a Alban Colossus into the exile. Shaman of the pack, hitting us for 1. And bone splinters that I imagine is going towards the awoken horror, but doesn't matter because we are about to use our final talent of the Telepath to finish this game with a milling. But how, would you ask? How are you going to fetch once again the same talent of the Telepath from the graveyard? Nick, what are you doing? So there are ways. There are hidden ways right in front of your noses. So countermand. Uh, Alright. So I was thinking if is it possible to enable a spell mastery, but not quite. We can countermand Murderous Compulsion, but it's not going to be possible. So we recover the talent of Telepath yet again from the graveyard, and we are going to cast this over the opponent, and his final card was a land that went to the graveyard, and we managed to destroy the library of our opponent using talent of the Telepath, and I'm quite happy about having managed to pull that feat. Of course, if you want to mill the opponent, do a different deck with more reliable cards, but it was quite funny, so I hope you have a story to tell to your grandchildren about, and until the next time I'm going to be saying goodbye. Don't forget to leave your comments, and sayonara.